The air is the first thing I register, thick and heavy with scents that do not belong together, yet somehow form a complete world. There is the rich, dark smell of polished mahogany and expensive leather, an aroma of power and permanence that seems to stain the very molecules of oxygen. Underneath it, however, is something else, something deeply personal and feminine, a whisper of jasmine and a sharp, clean note like ozone after a lightning strike. The combination is intoxicating, and I find myself breathing it in deeply as the plush carpet fibers press into the skin of my knees, a sensation both soft and abrasive through the thin fabric of my trousers. My world is framed by the heavy, carved edge of the desk above me, a solid line of shadow that cuts off the sprawling cityscape visible through the panoramic window. Below this line, in my dim and confined space, there is only the elegant curve of a woman's leg. It is a study in lines and textures, from the sheer, almost invisible nylon stretching over a toned calf muscle to the razor-thin heel of a stiletto that hovers inches from the floor. The ankle, slender and graceful, pivots in a slow, hypnotic rhythm, a silent metronome marking a time that only its owner seems to hear. A gentle but absolute pressure settles on the back of my neck, just below my hairline. It is the sole of her other shoe, its presence a quiet, undeniable command that bypasses all my confused thoughts and speaks directly to my nerves. My body understands before my mind can formulate a protest or even a question, and I instinctively lower my head in submission. My own hands, feeling like disconnected things that belong to someone else, begin to move forward, their purpose suddenly clear and singular in this confusing new reality. They reach for the shoe on the foot that had been swaying so mesmerizingly just moments before. My fingers, clumsy and trembling, make contact with the cool, smooth patent leather. I fumble with the impossibly small buckle on the delicate ankle strap, the cold metal a stark contrast to the warmth radiating from her skin. The click it makes as it comes undone is the only sound in the suffocating silence, a tiny punctuation mark in a sentence I cannot yet read. I carefully slide the strap free, my movements slow and reverent, as if I am handling a priceless and fragile artifact. The second shoe follows the first, slipped off with a practiced ease that my hands now seem to possess. I place them side by side on the carpet, a silent offering in the dark. With the barrier of the shoes gone, my palms find the arches of her feet, and a jolt, electric and profound, shoots up my arms. Her skin is impossibly soft and warm, a living, breathing heat that feels both startling and profoundly grounding. For a moment, all I can do is hold them, feeling the fine bones beneath the skin and the faint, rhythmic pulse of her blood. Her toes curl against my palm, a subtle, involuntary response that feels like a secret message passing between us. My own breath catches in my throat, trapped somewhere between a gasp and a sigh. A wave of shame, hot and sharp, washes over me, but it is immediately followed by a powerful undertow of something else, a dark, thrilling current of excitement I have not felt in decades. The two emotions wrestle within me, a dizzying conflict that leaves my head light and my pulse hammering in my ears. Just as my mind begins to spiral, to drown in the torrent of questions and self-recrimination, a hand descends from above. Her fingers, long and cool, thread into my hair, not pulling or yanking, but weaving themselves into the strands with a deliberate, possessive tenderness. The grip is firm, a silent anchor in the storm of my thoughts, stilling the chaos with its simple physical authority. She holds my head, and in that grip there is a clear and unmistakable sense of ownership. The questions that screamed in my head just moments ago, "How did I get here? Why am I doing this?" begin to fade, their urgency replaced by a profound and immediate sense of the present. The darkness under the desk no longer feels like a place of humiliation, but a private, insulated world, a sanctuary from the rules that exist in the light. In this moment, there is only the scent of her perfume, the warmth of her skin against mine, and the steadying weight of her hand in my hair. I close my eyes, and for the first time, I surrender completely to the not knowing. Weeks ago, the world was a landscape of muted grays and unfamiliar rhythms, a place I no longer recognized as my own. Returning to the corporate ecosystem after so many years away felt like trying to breathe underwater. The air itself, thick with ambition and a low hum of servers, was foreign and hostile. I felt like a ghost haunting the hallways, my presence barely registering on the vibrant, youthful specter of the office. This internship was a desperate, final grasp at relevance, a plea to a world that had seemingly forgotten I existed, and a quiet attempt to prove to myself that my best years were not already a distant memory. The open-plan office was a sea of focused energy, in which I was a solitary, unmoving island. I observed the others, their easy camaraderie, the effortless way they navigated the digital and social currents of this environment. They were a tribe with its own language of acronyms and inside jokes, a language I could not speak. In their eyes, I saw my own reflection, not as a peer, but as a curiosity, a relic from a bygone era of fax machines and landlines. My movements were slow and deliberate, a stark contrast to their quick, fluid efficiency, and every keystroke I made felt like a clumsy, loud intrusion into their seamless workflow. The chief executive officer was less a person and more of an event, a force of nature that warped the very atmosphere of the building. We, the interns and junior staff, only ever saw her in transit, a sleek, powerful silhouette moving down the long central corridor, leaving a wake of silence and averted eyes. Her heels clicked on the polished concrete with the precise, rhythmic authority of a ticking clock counting down to something important. She never looked at us, her gaze always fixed forward, and her very presence was a reminder of the vast, unbridgeable distance between her world and mine. My days were filled with the mundane tasks reserved for those at the bottom of the corporate food chain, collating spreadsheets that no one would read, fetching coffee, and making copies. Each menial chore was a small, stinging reminder of my diminished status. I performed them with a quiet diligence that often went unnoticed, my contributions invisible, my efforts absorbed into the vast, impersonal machinery of the company. I was a temporary cog, easily replaceable and utterly forgettable, and the weight of that insignificance was a heavy cloak I wore from the moment I arrived until the moment I left. Then came the report. It was a dense, convoluted beast of a project, a financial analysis so tedious and complex that it had been passed from desk to desk like a hot potato. It sat on the server, untouched and dreaded by everyone who knew of its existence. It represented a kind of corporate poison ivy, a thankless task with high potential for error and zero potential for glory. Seeing it as my only possible opportunity to make any sort of mark, I claimed the project for myself, a quiet act of defiance against my own invisibility. That night, the office was a hollow, silent shell, and I was its sole occupant. Under the cold, artificial glow of the overhead lights, I wrestled with the numbers and projections, immersing myself in the intricate logic of the financial models. For hours, I was lost in the work, the part of my brain that had once thrived on such challenges slowly, painfully reawakening. Well after midnight, fueled by stale coffee and sheer stubbornness, I found it. A single, critical miscalculation buried deep within the data. a flawed assumption that skewed the entire quarter's projections. It was a small discovery, but it felt like a seismic shift. Correcting the error required me to rebuild a significant portion of the report from the ground up, a task that consumed the rest of the night. As the first pale hints of dawn began to streak the sky outside the vast office windows, I finally finished. I submitted the revised document and a concise memo explaining the error and my solution, my hands trembling slightly from exhaustion and a flicker of something that felt dangerously like pride. I went home feeling hollowed out but strangely alive, having accomplished something tangible for the first time in months. The initial response was silence. The report, once a source of office-wide dread, simply vanished into the digital ether. I returned to my usual tasks, the brief flicker of accomplishment already dimming under the familiar weight of my daily routine. Then I heard my name. It was spoken in a morning meeting by one of the senior managers, a brief, almost casual mention in connection with the corrected financials. A few heads turned in my direction, their expressions a mixture of surprise and mild curiosity. It was the first time most of them had likely registered my name at all. Later that afternoon, the email appeared in my inbox. The sender's name made my heart stop for a full second before it began to hammer against my ribs. It was her. The subject line was blank, and the body of the message contained only 2 stark, commanding sentences instructing me to be in her office at 3 o'clock. There was no greeting, no closing, just a time and a place, an imperial summons that left no room for interpretation or refusal. The walk from my desk to the executive suite on the top floor felt like a journey across a vast, empty desert. The familiar office hum faded away, replaced by the sound of my own frantic heartbeat and the soft, rhythmic scuff of my shoes on the carpet. Each step brought me closer to the imposing double doors of her corner office, a portal to a world I had only ever glimpsed from a great distance. The polished wood seemed to gleam with a power all its own, reflecting my own pale, anxious face back at me. I stood before the door for a long moment, my hand hovering over the cool brass handle. I tried to calm my breathing, to gather the scattered pieces of my composure into some semblance of professionalism. This was it, the moment my quiet act of diligence had wrought, the consequence of my decision to stop being invisible. I was terrified, but beneath the fear there was a tiny, defiant spark of anticipation. I took one final steadying breath and pushed the heavy door open. Stepping out of her office, I re-enter a world that is fundamentally the same, yet feels irrevocably altered. The fluorescent lights of the main office seem harsher, the ambient hum of computers and quiet conversations more intrusive. My own body feels foreign, a vessel carrying a secret that sets me apart from everyone around me. My knees are weak, and there's a tremor in my hands that I try to hide by clenching them into fists at my sides. A deep, lingering heat resides in the pit of my stomach, a confusing amalgam of shame and a strange, exhilarating power that I don't know what to do with. The next day, the shift is palpable. It begins with an email assigning me to a new project, a high-stakes corporate acquisition that is well above the pay grade of an intern. My name is listed directly under hers, a pairing that causes a ripple of quiet speculation to move through the office. I feel the weight of dozens of curious glances as I walk to my desk, and the air of invisibility that had once been my cloak is now completely gone. I am no longer a ghost in the machine. I am an anomaly, a puzzle that my colleagues quietly try to solve when they think I'm not looking. Our meetings become a regular occurrence, scheduled in the late afternoon and often stretching long into the evening, well after the rest of the office has emptied out. In the vast, silent space, with the city lights twinkling like a fallen constellation outside her window, the professional boundaries that define the day begin to dissolve. The conversations drift from market analysis and shareholder reports to more personal territories. She asks about my life before this, and I find myself sharing pieces of my past that I have kept locked away for years, the words spilling out of me as if of their own accord. Her proximity becomes a constant, charged presence in my life. When we review documents together, she stands so close that I can feel the warmth radiating from her body and smell that signature scent of jasmine and ozone on her skin. Her hand might brush against mine as we reach for the same piece of paper, a fleeting contact that sends a jolt through my entire system. She has a habit of placing a hand on my shoulder when leaning in to look at my screen, her fingers resting just above my collarbone with a weight that feels both casual and incredibly deliberate, leaving my skin tingling long after she has moved away. I am pulled into her orbit, a world far removed from my quiet, solitary existence. There are late-night dinners at exclusive restaurants where the maitre d' knows her by name, places with hushed atmospheres and menus without prices. She drives a sleek, dark car that glides silently through the city streets, the leather interior cocooning us in a private world of our own. In these moments, she is not just my boss. She is a powerful, captivating woman who has, for reasons I cannot fathom, chosen to draw me into her confidence and her life. This new reality is a potent and addictive drug. I begin to crave her attention, the intensity of her focus when it is turned on me. I find myself dressing with more care in the mornings, choosing outfits not for comfort or professionalism, but with the hope of catching her eye. The approval I see in her gaze when she looks at me becomes more important than any positive feedback on a report or a successful presentation. I am becoming someone I do not fully recognize, a woman shaped and molded by the force of her will and the allure of her power. There are moments of doubt, of course, moments when the rational part of my brain screams that this is wrong, that I am a pawn in a game whose rules I do not understand. I see the way others in the senior management team defer to her, the mixture of fear and respect in their eyes, and I wonder what I have gotten myself into. I feel the invisible threads of her influence wrapping around me, pulling me tighter into a web of obligation and desire. Yet the sheer intoxication of her presence, the feeling of being seen and chosen by her, is enough to silence those dissenting voices. The dynamic between us settles into a strange, unspoken rhythm, a dance of power and intimacy that plays out in the charged silence of her office after hours. The line between mentor and something more blurs until it disappears completely. She teaches me about the ruthless intricacies of corporate strategy, and in the same breath, her eyes will linger on my mouth, a silent invitation that makes my heart pound. It is a dangerous, thrilling education, and I am a willing, even eager student, absorbing every lesson she has to offer. I find myself living a dual existence. During the day, I am the diligent intern, exceeding all expectations, my work ethic and insight earning me a grudging respect from my colleagues. But at night, in the rarefied air of her world, I am someone else entirely. I am her confidant, her project, her secret. This hidden part of my life is a source of both profound excitement and a deep, gnawing anxiety. The secrecy is a heavy burden, but it also creates a powerful bond between us, a shared reality that no one else can penetrate. As the days turn into weeks, I stop questioning it. I allow myself to be carried along by the current, to exist solely within the intoxicating bubble of her world. The memory of the woman I was just a few weeks ago, invisible, insecure, and adrift, begins to feel like a dream, a story about someone else. In her presence, I feel vibrant and alive, my own potential magnified and reflected back at me through her powerful gaze. I am hers in a way that transcends the simple definitions of boss and intern, And for now, that is enough. The weekend arrives under the guise of an urgent project deadline, a crisis that necessitates our retreat from the city. We drive out of the concrete labyrinth and into the deep green of the countryside, the landscape transforming with every mile. Her country house is not a cozy cottage, but a blade of glass and steel tucked into a dense forest, a structure of stark modernity at odds with its wild surroundings. The transparent walls dissolve the boundary between inside and out, and the feeling of being constantly watched by the silent, ancient trees is a stark contrast to the oppressive confines of the corporate office. We spend the first several hours in a state of intense, focused work, our laptops humming in the otherwise profound silence of the house. We sit at a large, minimalist table, the project spread between us, falling into a symbiotic rhythm of analysis and strategy. The dynamic is professional, an extension of the roles we play in the city, but the setting subtly alters the chemistry between us. There is no audience here, no corporate hierarchy to uphold, only the two of us and the looming deadline, surrounded by the quiet indifference of the woods. As evening bleeds into the sky, she closes her laptop with a soft click that echoes in the quiet room. The sound marks a definitive end to the workday, a signal of a shift I was not expecting. She rises and stretches, the movement fluid and unguarded, and for the first time, I see the exhaustion she carries behind her impeccable corporate facade. She disappears for a moment and returns wearing a soft cashmere sweater and leggings, her feet bare, having shed the armor of her professional life as easily as she shed her shoes. We move to a sunken living area where a fire is already laid in a wide stone hearth. As she coaxes the logs to life, the flickering flames cast dancing shadows across her face, softening the sharp, authoritative lines I am so used to. In the low, warm light, the mask of the chief executive officer finally cracks and falls away. I see the fine lines of fatigue around her eyes, the slight, vulnerable curve of her mouth that is usually said in a firm, decisive line. She is no longer an icon of power, but simply a woman illuminated by firelight. She begins to speak, her voice lower than usual, stripped of its commanding cadence. She talks not of profit margins or market shares, but of her childhood, of the relentless drive that propelled her to the top, and of the profound loneliness that she found waiting for her there. The stories are not pleas for sympathy, but simple, unvarnished statements of fact, offered up into the intimate space between us. I listen, completely captivated, feeling as though I am being given a rare and precious gift, a glimpse into the guarded heart of the woman behind the title. As she speaks, she gestures with her hands, and at one point she reaches across the small space separating us, her fingers lightly grazing the back of my hand. The touch is not a command or a prelude to a demand. It is hesitant, almost questioning, a spark of contact that has nothing to do with cower. Without thinking, I turn my own hand over, my palm facing up, and her fingers gently intertwine with mine. We sit there for a long moment, our hands clasped, the fire crackling beside us, a new and unspoken language forming between us. The emotional intimacy of the moment soon translates into a physical one. She leans in, her eyes searching mine in the dim light, and the kiss that follows is nothing like I have experienced with her before. It is slow and deeply tender, unhurried, and full of a feeling I cannot quite name. It is not the kiss of a superior taking what she wants, but the kiss of an equal, a searching, mutual exploration that speaks of vulnerability and a longing for connection. It is a revelation, and I respond with a yearning that surprises me with its intensity. We move from the fireside to her bedroom as if in a dream, our hands still linked. The journey through the dark, silent house feels momentous, every step charged with a quiet, profound significance. The glass walls of her bedroom make it feel as if we are sleeping in a clearing in the woods, suspended between the dark earth and the star-dusted sky. There is no pretense, no game of dominance and submission, only a shared magnetic pull that feels both inevitable and profoundly right. That night, our bodies communicate in the language our lips had just begun to learn. Every touch is gentle, every caress is an act of discovery. She explores my body with a reverence and care that leaves me breathless, and I, in turn, feel empowered to do the same. In the soft light of the moon filtering through the trees, the power dynamic that has defined our entire relationship evaporates completely, leaving only two women, bared to each other in every possible way. It is a night of profound, resonant intimacy, a quiet symphony of shared pleasure and emotional release. Afterwards, we lie tangled in the sheets, her head resting on my shoulder, her breathing slow and even. The silence is comfortable, filled with a sense of peace that settles deep into my bones. For the first time since this all began, my mind is quiet. The usual cacophony of fear, desire, and confusion silenced by the simple, overwhelming feeling of contentment. In the quiet darkness of her room, surrounded by the forest, I feel as though I have finally arrived at a place where I belong. I watch her sleep, the moonlight tracing the strong, elegant lines of her face. A feeling I have been suppressing for weeks finally rises to the surface, clear and undeniable. It is a deep, aching tenderness that blossoms in my chest, a feeling so powerful it almost hurts. I realize, with a certainty that is both terrifying and exhilarating, that I am falling in love with her. In that moment, I allow myself to imagine a future, a life that extends beyond the internship, a partnership built not on power, but on the genuine connection I feel we have forged here, in the heart of the woods. Waking up the next morning with her arm draped across my waist feels like the most natural thing in the world. The early morning light streams through the glass walls, illuminating the room and the woman sleeping soundly beside me. The intimacy of the night before has not faded with the dawn. It lingers in the air, a tangible presence that reassures me that what happened between us was real and meaningful. It feels like a beginning, the first chapter of a story I am desperate to continue writing, and I allow myself to believe in it completely. The final day of my internship arrives with a sense of quiet, confident celebration. The city outside the vast office windows seems burnished with promise, its familiar angles softened by the morning light. I move through my morning tasks with a newfound sense of purpose and belonging, no longer feeling like a temporary fixture. The future feels like a tangible thing, a path laid out before me, and I walk it with an assurance that is both professional and deeply personal. The impending final meeting with her feels not like an evaluation, but a formality, the official beginning of the life I had allowed myself to dream of in the quiet of her country home. The summons arrives precisely at noon, a calendar notification on my screen, stark and impersonal. The formal, automated text is a stark contrast to the easy intimacy we had shared, and a small, cold knot of unease begins to form in my stomach. I dismiss it as standard corporate procedure, the necessary resetting of boundaries now that we are back within these walls. As I make the familiar journey to her corner office, my nervousness is tinged not with the fear of the unknown, but with the thrilling anticipation of confirmation, of hearing the words that will solidify my place here and by her side. The moment I step into her office, the warmth of the past weekend evaporates as if it never existed. The air is cool and clinical, the space between us across the vast mahogany desk feeling more like a chasm than it ever has before. She is the chief executive officer again, a figure carved from ambition and control, her posture erect, her expression unreadable. The woman who slept in my arms, whose vulnerabilities I had glimpsed in the firelight, is gone, replaced by this formidable, distant stranger. My carefully constructed confidence begins to crumble, replaced by a sudden, chilling premonition of loss. She does not waste time on pleasantries. With a cool, professional efficiency, she slides a slim manila folder across the polished surface of the desk. My heart beats a hopeful rhythm, my mind anticipating the weight of an employment contract, the official documentation of my new beginning. I open it, my fingers tracing the crisp edge of the top page. But the words that swim into focus are not what I expect. They are letter of recommendation and severance agreement. A silent roar fills my ears, drowning out the sounds of the city, and the meticulously constructed future I had built in my mind shatters into a million pieces. My body moves on autopilot, my hands closing the folder with a quiet finality. I am numb, a hollowed-out shell where a person used to be, the shock too profound for tears or anger. My only instinct is to flee, to escape this room where my dreams have just been methodically dismantled. I stand on unsteady legs, murmuring something about gathering my personal items, my voice sounding distant and strange to my own ears. As I turn to leave, her voice cuts through the fog of my disbelief, not with warmth or apology, but with a cold, clear command that stops me in my tracks. From a locked drawer in her desk, a drawer I had never seen her open, she retrieves a small, ornate box. It is beautifully crafted from a dark wood and inlaid with iridescent mother-of-pearl, an object of antique elegance that seems utterly out of place in this temple of modern corporate power. She places it on the desk between us with a quiet, deliberate click. My mind, still struggling to process the first blow, cannot assign any meaning to this object. I simply stare at it, a strange and beautiful thing that has suddenly become the focal point of my entire world. She opens it. The interior is lined with black velvet, and resting within are not jewels, but a bizarre and curated collection of personal effects. There is a single, expensive-looking cufflink, a faded silk handkerchief, a man's heavy signet ring, and a delicate, antique-looking brooch. I understand her words not as a confession, but as a statement of methodology, a clinical explanation of her process. She speaks of finding potential, of forging it in the intense fire of a deeply personal and all-consuming mentorship, and then, once the project is complete, of releasing it into the world, stronger and more capable than before. The truth lands with the force of a physical impact, knocking the last of the air from my lungs. The late nights, the intense projects, the shared secrets, the carefully constructed intimacy of the weekend, it was all a part of the crucible. I was not her partner, her lover, or even her colleague. I was her project. She did not fall in love with me. She invested in me. And this box, this beautiful, terrible box, is her portfolio, a collection of trophies taken from all the others who came before me. The woman she had so carefully built over the past few weeks was a temporary construct designed only to be broken. Her voice fades into the background hum of the building, the words themselves becoming meaningless shapes of sound. My entire universe shrinks, collapsing to the dimensions of the small open box on her desk. The objects nestled in the black velvet are a graveyard of intimacies, a collection of stolen signifiers. Each one, the lonely cufflink, the forgotten ring, is a silent testament to a carefully orchestrated betrayal, a story just like mine. I understand now that my experience was not unique. It was a process, and I was simply the latest raw material to be run through her machine. She waits, her expression calm and patient, her stillness that of a predator that knows its prey is already caught. Her gaze lifts from the box and finally meets mine. There is no malice in her eyes, no triumph, only a cool and unsettling sense of procedural finality. She extends her hand across the polished expanse of the desk, turning it so the palm faces upward. The gesture is simple, an open question that is simultaneously an undeniable command. The souvenir. She is waiting for me to provide the closing artifact, the tangible proof of her work that will allow her to officially close my file. The silence in the room is absolute, broken only by the frantic, silent beating of my own heart. I do not make a conscious decision. My mind is a roaring void, a static hiss incapable of formulating a plan or a protest. Yet my own hand begins to move, a slow, detached appendage acting on a script I did not write. It bypasses the company access card clipped to my blazer and ignores the simple functional watch on my wrist. My fingers, feeling as though they belong to someone else, rise in a slow, deliberate arc, moving not toward my purse or my pockets, but toward the hollow of my own throat. My fingertips make contact with the familiar, cool metal of a thin chain. It has rested against my skin for as long as I can remember, a simple silver locket given to me by my mother years ago. It is the one constant, the anchor to the person I was before I ever stepped foot in this building, a tangible link to a self I now barely recognize. With a strange, clinical detachment that frightens me, my fingers find the small clasp at the back of my neck. The mechanism gives way with a soft click, and the chain slides through my fingers, its weight suddenly immense and foreign in my palm. I lean forward, my movements stiff and jerky, and place the silver locket into her still outstretched hand. It gleams against the skin of her palm, looking fragile and pathetically small. She does not look at me. Her entire focus is on the object, turning it over with the dispassionate curiosity of a scientist examining a specimen. She runs her thumb over the worn, smooth surface, a surface polished by years of my own unconscious touch, before her fingers close around it, concealing it from my view. With a final, soft click that seems to echo in the silent room, she drops my locket into the velvet-lined box. It settles among the ghosts of her other projects, just another piece in her collection. She closes the lid, and the sound of the latch catching is a definitive, percussive end to my time here, a cell door locking for the last time. Without another glance in my direction, she turns back to her computer screen, her shoulders squaring as her focus immediately shifts to the next item on her agenda. The transaction is complete. I have been successfully processed. I walk out of the office, through the main floor, and into the elevator. The descent is silent and swift. No one looks at me. No one acknowledges my departure. I feel unseen, but not in the way I was before. Now I feel transparent, as if I have no substance left to be seen. The city streets are a chaotic blur of motion and noise that cannot penetrate the profound, ringing silence within me. My hand drifts to my neck, my fingers probing the empty, cold space where the locket used to rest, a small patch of skin that feels like a fresh, invisible wound. As I am swallowed by the anonymous afternoon crowd, a new feeling begins to surface, rising from the cold, hollow space where my heart used to be. It is not anger or grief or even shame. It is something dark and repellent, a nascent thrill that curdles in the pit of my stomach. I gave her the one pure thing I had left, the very core of my past self, and the act of placing it in her trophy box did not feel like a violation. In a way I cannot yet comprehend, it felt like a graduation. She didn't just break me, she remade me in her own image, and that final, disgusting offering was not her victory, but my own first monstrous act of letting go.